Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis, that over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, you beautiful, beautiful, talented writers. And Karissa Harlow, your host over there, aka Catherine, aka Lewis. And I'm Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. And par for the course, made Karissa push back 10 minutes again today. But it was not that reason I was making jelly. And I had to get
Isn't
it off the
that
stove.
the most bizarre reason you ever heard? I'm like, that's the kind of like Carissa excuse. Like when I've
Yeah.
told people I'm sick too many times, I'm like, no, I'm making jelly now. So
Yeah, exactly. It seems like too out there to be true, but I was like, no, legitimate. I made corn cob jelly. I I spent 4 hours finishing weeding my tomato and pepper patch this morning. And then I spent basically the rest of the day pickling and canning yellow banana peppers and green tomatoes. And then making corn cob jelly, which I literally, it's such a process, man. So I did some other chores and stuff in there too. But I told Javi, I sat down for 15 minutes today and I ate like a bunch of goldfish earlier for lunch. And that's what I did for lunch. And then just now I was like, oh my God, I'm going to shove a few handfuls of goldfish down again because apparently that's just my go-to. And here I am. Not that anyone wanted the whole story, but if you wanted to know how I got here today, that's how I got here. So
that's how. Welcome. Glad you made it.
Thank you. Yeah. How was your day and your week?
I've been kind of like not feeling great for the past couple days. For like, feminine reasons, not for, I won't go into too much detail, but it's been like a rough
I always go into too much
days.
detail.
I know you do. But that's okay. It's been like, I'm so lightheaded and like in pain. So it's been weird for the past couple days, but week overall, I got baptized on Sunday, which was pretty cool. So, I mean, I was baptized when I was 6 in the Catholic Church, and like that was fine and that was good and everything, but I don't feel like I really became a Christian until I was 13. And my pastor's been talking probably for a while, but it really started to sink in over the past couple months that like you should get baptized after, not like just at some point in your life, but you should do it after. And so I was like, okay. So I kind of decided the day before that I was going to go. They had like a group like baptism like set up and everything. So I registered the night before and it was pretty cool. So
that's awesome. I saw the pictures.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy for you. Cool. That feels good.
Thanks. Yeah. It's good. The funny thing is, so my grandmother, my mom put like the pictures and the videos and stuff, and like we have a family photo circle. And my grandma saw the video, but apparently she didn't read the caption, and she thought someone was trying to drown me. And she's like, why did no one do everything? I know. And I'm like, who would be standing around taking that video?
Yeah.
And then like, just like, hey guys, here's this time Carissa almost died.
Your parents are like, she'll be okay. It's better to be that we make a memory of this.
Yeah. We want to remember that time that a guy tried to drown her, but I was not being drowned.
That is so funny.
So, also, obviously, because when I was baptized as a kid, I'm pretty sure they did like the sprinkle thing or like the cup thing where instead of immersion. And so this was immersion. So I went under the water.
Yeah.
And you're not under there very long. Like I kind of expected for some reason to like be held there for a couple seconds, but nope, you just come right back up.
Yeah. It's just a dunk. It's just a really fast dunk in the water. Yep.
I know. So also I was like, what a terrible attempt at drowning also. So,
he changed his mind really fast.
Yeah. He's like, no, this is wrong.
He's like, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't do this.
Oh, there's a camera on me. Never mind.
Oh, yeah. People are watching.
No. But yeah, so it was really cool. And then two of my friends, well, one of my friends and her husband, who I don't know well yet, but I suspect maybe will become friends, just like happened to be there and didn't know I was going to be there. So they were waving at me across like the pool because it was at a swimming pool. And I was just, I have terrible eyesight and I can't wear my glasses because I'm going to get in the pool. So I'm like, pretty sure that's who I think it is. They're like a super noticeable couple because he's black and she has red hair. And so I'm like, this is an uncommon combination of people to just see sitting together. So I was like, I think that's them. I'm going to wave. I felt confident waving, and then it was them. So
nice. That's funny. Way to go with your gut.
Yeah, exactly. Because normally when I do that, it's like they're not waving at me. So I just tend to just ignore people for the sake of my own social safety. But you know,
yes, I completely understand.
So. Yeah. But yeah, it was cool. So that kind of, I mean, that's not the only thing I did this week, but it kind of took up the emotional segment of my week. So it was cool.
Nice. Well, that's very exciting. Yeah. I know we skipped D&D because everyone ended up having plans anyways. And then you were like, I actually have to get baptized. And I was like, this is so cool. Like absolute best reason for skipping D&D ever.
I know. That's and it exciting. Was like, I was considering it, right? And I was like, I would miss D&D. And I know that's a stupid reason not to get baptized, but I was like, I feel bad, like pulling out and everything. But then like Kendall and other people were like, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I was like, God, this is the perfect opportunity. Thank you.
Time. I was like, this worked out well, that everyone who had issues all had them schedule issues all had them the same weekend. That worked out quite nicely. So
that was cool. But hopefully next weekend.
Nice.
No surprises.
And I got to take my so my mom's boyfriend's daughter, his youngest daughter, I could take her out to get her nails done. She's like 18, but she's so cool. So we we went out and talked about Gilmore Girls, because even though she's 18, she like knows, she's so smart. She gets every reference like to like whatever Gilmore Girls or like show from that era I reference. She's just like seen them all. So even if I say it under my breath, she's always like, aha, and she gets it. So it makes me feel good. Cool. But yeah,
she's like an old soul, except not old. Not that old.
Exactly. So I got to enjoy the similarity of our old souls as we got our nails done. It was also the first time in 2 years I got my nails done in a salon. So they look very nice right now. If you can see, they're trying to fade into the background.
Your ring matches or whatever that is.
I know. It's my silicone ring, my silicone wedding ring, which I got because I lost my other one when I went to the beach.
I was going to say, wait, what? You have that's your wedding ring? Because I thought your wedding ring was like a, not aquamarine, but it was something.
Oh, I have an opal
not a diamond
on my
opal.
Yeah, I have an opal on my engagement ring, but I rarely wear it because I don't want to hurt the opal, and I'm just destroying my hand. Like today, I was weeding in the garden. My nails are so sore. My hands are so sore, and there's like dirt permanently embedded in my skin and my hands. And like where like the skin is dry. Yeah, it's really cute. And then I came in and I worked with like hot boiling liquids. And like farm is just a hard place to wear it. So I save it for when I'm going out somewhere. And then I have another ring that like I could totally wear, and I have sometimes I wear it around the farm. It has like a like a knot on it, and it's my wedding band, and I love it very much. But I had taken it off and left it here for when I went to the beach because I didn't want to lose it. And now I'm a little scared that my fingers are going to swell because I'm pregnant and I'm going to get stuck. Like I'm not wearing my toe ring right now because of that, and it makes me so sad because I love my toe ring.
Your toes swell too, and that makes sense, but I've never thought about it.
Typically swell. Mine haven't swollen up that bad, but my concern is with the toe ring specifically because they're already kind of hard to get on. I'm like, if my toes swell at all, it's not coming off. Like I don't want to have to go to the hospital for this and then have to like cut through my beautiful, like nice favorite toe ring. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to preemptively give that up for the rest of the season, which is a bummer. But
seems legit. It seems like
so I got my nails done and got to hang out with 18-year-old Lily. And it's also sometimes confusing because mom will be like, oh, today Lily said this or did that. And I think of my cat immediately because her name is Lily and she's been in my life longer. So I'm like, the cat did what?
That's why you say 18-year-old Lily.
18-year-old Lily.
I assume the cat is not
in my
18.
head. I'm like 18-year-old. No, I think Lily the cat is 16. So, she's getting
closer
up there,
than I assumed, but yeah.
yeah, she's an old lady. She's getting up there. But yeah, so that was fun, and got to gossip about our parents, which is always fun. And yeah, I'm trying to think. It's so refreshing sometimes to hang out like with a really bright 18-year-old because you get to enjoy like their starry-eyed idealism, but also like they're so clever and quick and still so hopeful about life. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice. Look at that. Like,
man,
breath of
I miss
fresh
that.
air. I remember when I believed in things. Just kidding. But yeah, so anyway, so that was fun. And I did that instead, and I wouldn't have gotten to if we were going to do D&D. So it all turned out. I also woke up that morning and I was dreaming about a Chipotle burrito with hot Cheetos inside of it. And so then I was craving Chipotle and it was specific. And so we got to get Chipotle also. I made the healthy decision and got a bowl with brown rice and stuff instead and like no queso. So it wasn't even remotely as satisfying as my dream. But I wanted a burrito with queso. But
do you not like brown rice? I actually prefer brown rice over white rice.
I like brown rice. I just really, really like Chipotle's white rice. Like I really like their rice. I love Chipotle's burritos. Like it's probably one of my favorite places. There's not a Chipotle anywhere near us, so I don't get it very often. But whenever we go up north for church and also for D&D, there's a Chipotle right there by my sister's apartment. So I was like, we're doing it. Go. Yeah, and it was so good, but I didn't get what I wanted, so it wasn't like satisfying. But that's okay. Baby's been just like calling out things that it wants, like
it
Burger
sees
King.
It and it's like that now.
Yeah. Did I tell you my thing with Burger King?
I don't think so.
I've always thought Burger King was highly overrated. As far as like fast food chains go, I have always put it like at the bottom of the list, just above Jack in the Box, which I feel is completely made of cardboard. I believe Jack in the Box is disgusting food that people shouldn't eat. It's so gross.
Got it.
And then
I'm interested already. Keep going.
I know. And so Burger King I've always viewed as just above that. So not my go-to. What is this? For me? Thank you.
Is it Burger King?
No, my husband just brought me tamales. He got them from someone in the parking lot at Home Depot. Yeah, because they do that here. Do they do that in Arizona? Are there like just like kind of like random vendors?
I don't really go to Home Depot a lot. Do you mean specifically Home Depot? No,
I just mean like random places, like random parking lots.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. Like the gas stations have them sometimes around the side of it. We get a lot of people like selling like tacos and like produce, like cactus stuff, I thought like prickly pear jelly and stuff.
Yeah, because you guys are like Southwest too, and we're obviously just south, not Southwest. Yeah, but it is something I enjoy about the South. It's like these people come over and make like the best, most delicious food, and you can get it like in a parking lot. I don't know what Mom is saying. Just leaving, so we'll be before home with dinner. That's what she said. I have no idea what that means. But anyway, so yes, I will be when. So that distraction aside, I'm trying so hard to stay on topic. Okay, Burger King. Been craving it like crazy. And I was like, I feel like it's just not going to live up to, like what I want it to be, because it's like a really weird craving to have. Apparently my mom, when she was pregnant with me, also really craved Burger King. And I was like, it's just so odd because she's really not into Burger King. I have been like kind of anti Burger King. Like of all the places, the only other place I'd rather go less is Jack in the Box. So I would never pick Burger King, but their one just opened up near us. And so I was like, you know what, we're going to go just for the heck of it, because we live in a tiny town, so there's not a lot of stuff. So we're going to go to this brand new Burger King. I got a #1, which is just your Whopper. I got it with cheese. And dude, oh my God, it was everything. And I'm usually
it was like everything you wanted.
It was everything I wanted and more. It like, it was insanely good. And the French fries from Burger King, I'm usually like, they're like so like near the bottom tier as far as like fast food fries go. I'll still eat them because I'll eat any kind of fries. But I don't know if it's just because like it's a new Burger King, so they're doing everything top tier right now or what. But I've had that Burger King 3 times now since then. It is delicious. I get the same thing every time. It is so freaking satisfying. It's unbelievable. And then the fries are always absolutely perfect. So I don't know what's going on, but I'm up for Burger King anytime. And I really thought, because based on my past with hormones, I usually crave Taco Bell, and I still love and appreciate my Taco Bell. But I really thought like if there was going to be like a really intense fast food craving, I thought it would be Taco Bell or maybe Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A has been like, for the first time in my life, I've been like, Chick-fil-A their mac and cheese is everything to the baby, which is I never would have thought before either. So it's just everything is upside down, and Burger King is at the top. So I don't know if anybody wanted to hear that story, but that's where I'm at right now.
When one of my cousins was pregnant, she like craved Chick-fil-A all the time. And so her husband was constantly going out and getting Chick-fil-A, and then like Sundays would come and she'd be like, death to all that like exists. Like she was so upset about it. But that's so funny. Also, I don't love Burger King either. I feel you on that. For the like, past Ash. I feel
maybe all that you're lacking is an unborn child in your womb.
There you go. That's how Burger King has survived this long. They just cater to pregnant women. There's some kind of chemical or ingredient in the burger that's like, baby wants that.
The baby wants it. Yeah, exactly. And then I guess another fun baby news. Mom got to feel the baby kick last night. So that was cute because baby's like just now big enough where like if someone puts their hand on my stomach at the right time, like they might feel a kick, they might not. So that was fun. So she's the first person other than me, obviously, to feel a baby kick. So that was fun.
That's awesome.
And baby was kicking me hard. I was like, bro, like
calm down.
I'm just trying to sit here, dude. Because his or her thing is that baby only kicks me when I like sit down and recline. Like sitting down right now because I'm like active. Nothing. Like baby is probably still asleep because baby sleeps almost all day. And I move around all day, so baby sleeps while I'm moving around because it rocks the baby to sleep. So only when I'm like ready to like rest, then baby is like, I am awake and I have some energy and I just gotta get it out. And yeah. So it's pretty cute. The first time I felt the baby move, for absolutely no reason to set me into a genuine panic attack. I have no idea why. No idea why I did that. Most people are like, and that was the moment I felt closest to my baby. I was like, there is an alien inside of me, and I can't tell if it's okay or not. And
oh my gosh.
It's such a strange reaction. Never thought I would have that reaction.
That would be a really foreign feeling. Like you've never had something kick you from within before. So I get that would be weird. That's fair.
Yeah, it was weird. And I was like, I'm trying to see it as like cool. Like there's an alien inside of me. But all I can think of is that I'm panicking. This is we, I guess, whatever.
That's boring, but less creepy than an alien.
I was just trying to be like, oh, this is cool. And my brain was like, you don't lie to yourself. This is too weird. You need to let yourself feel what you feel. Exactly. And I was like, okay. And then I panicked until I fell asleep.
Wow.
Now I'm good. Now it's like cool when baby kicks.
Yeah. But it was a story to tell future baby dragon slayer.
Yeah. So. Like you scared the crap out of me. Just because you were doing what babies do.
Oh my gosh. Watches this kid as like a soccer player or something, or like just constantly kicking things.
I haven't gotten to take a bite yet. I know. That's what I'm saying. Hobbies judge me because I haven't taken a bite of my tamale yet. I've been talking. I'm going to take a bite of it. He wants to see me take a bite of the tamale, so you guys who are watching.
Did he put something weird in it?
No, he's just being weirdly intense. He's looking at me with a very intense expression.
I think he put something in it, Ash.
He eat it up with everything.
It's delicious. Thank you. I'm definitely going to eat it. I'm very grateful. He heated it up and he put my favorite hot sauce on it.
Nice.
Hopefully you guys can't hear me chewing, but it is super freaking good.
Nice.
I hope you guys are all jealous. Make sure that you go buy stuff from those local vendors you see. It's way better than anything you get in the store.
Yeah, fair enough. True.
Aside from Burger King.
Yeah, no, but okay.
Anyways, is there anything else that you want to share with the peeps? Do you want to get into book recs?
We can get into book recs, though I do not have any. So, ta-da.
Ta-da! Okay, I finished Supernova, which is the last book. Yeah, in the Renegades trilogy. It was really good.
It was so good.
Things were like falling apart at the beginning. And then I just kept thinking, okay, things are going to get better and then they're going to fall apart worse. No, then they just kept falling apart worse and worse and worse. And I was like, I am panicking right now. Not as much as I was when I felt the baby kick the first time. But like, I was very anxious. I was like, I don't see how this is going to resolve. And I don't see how these two are ever going to understand each other. Like, oh my God. But it was so good. The ending was so good. It was so satisfying. It is definitely, I can say with confidence, this is one of those series that every book was better than the last, which I feel like is often not the case, but it was.
Marissa Meyer is so good at that. Like
really
every book and every subsequent book in her series, it's just it either maintains or it gets better. She doesn't have like a dud book in the middle. So
no, she really doesn't. So highly recommend if you guys have not read it. It is a superhero book, so I know some people are super into that. But it was.
I'm not into that, and I loved this series.
Yeah, so I kind of think you guys will still like this series.
Yeah.
It's so good, and it wasn't what I don't know what I was expecting. I really didn't have any expectations. I knew it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Okay. And it was awesome. It was so good. So there's my book rec. Is that whole series in the last book, and I finally finished it. So.
I will say too, let's see if I can remember, if you guys do like the Renegade series, Brandon Sanderson has the first book is called Steelheart. For some reason, The Reckoners is coming to mind. Is that the title of the series? I can't remember, but it's like a superhero series. It's a trilogy, and it's like, it's not similar, but if you liked Renegades, I think you would like Steelheart as well, and the trilogy. So I guess I'll recommend that, since I don't have anything current.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
one. What about our word of the week?
All right, our word of the week is Novaturient. 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 It's an adjective. I feel like it should be a noun, but it is an adjective. And it is desiring or seeking powerful change in your life, behavior, or in a certain situation. So if you have like a Novaturient lifestyle, would be if you're constantly changing.
I was like,
things.
And it's an adjective. Okay.
Yeah.
A Novaturient
lifestyle. Or like it could be Novaturient, and in a Novaturient phase where you're trying to change something.
Coincidentally, Nova is the main character of the Renegade series.
That's right.
And she does live a Novaturient lifestyle. So,
Novaturient plot? I don't know. I guess all plots really should be Novaturient.
It's true, but absolutely
in an extreme way, maybe.
Hers is pretty extreme. Yeah.
Gosh, I just love her character arc. Now I'm thinking about it again.
I know, I do too.
It's so good.
And it was realistic and it was unexpected. And at the end, I was like, I still didn't expect it to go the way that it's going. But I buy it. I'm like, no problem believing it.
Yeah, it's so good. So anyway.
I love it.
Yeah. So Novaturient. And also Nova. Also, I had a dog named Nova once.
Did you?
Yeah. My childhood dog, Nova and Quasar. Nova was they're space things, which is also why Aurora and Luna.
That is so cute.
Yeah. So Nova was a Cocker Spaniel Terrier mix. And then Quasar was a full American Eskimo dog.
Oh, those are such cute names. Oh my goodness. A lot of our animals had very normal names growing up. Like we had a cat named Mark, just weird stuff.
My dad had a cat named Mark. What? Or no, a cat named, my dad is Mark. My dad had a cat named, what was it, Fred? Something like that. It was like a super normal name. Yeah. That's my dad's name.
We had a cat named Emma. Like we had some very
Lily.
We had her named Henry. Yeah, a cat named Lily. Like we really didn't go outside the bounds of normal.
My dad is like really creative with his pet. I mean, I don't think he named Fred, so that doesn't count. But like his adult pet names, he's pretty like he has the theme. He has the astronomy theme going. Yeah. So
I think I'm pretty creative with pet names now. I mean, even in college, I all of those pet names were not my choices. Actually, I think Lily was weirdly, but Lily is a little bit more creative, I think, than Emma or Mark.
Or Mark. Yeah.
But in college, my claim to fame was I had a beta fish named Fluffy. Which I felt like was really good.
That was fun.
And he was very aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So, was Loki a fish too?
Loki? Thor and Loki were my ghost shrimp. They were my ghost
your shrimp.
Yeah. And then Sigthor was the massive snail. Yeah.
Yes.
And at some point, either Sigthor ate Thor and Loki, or Fluffy did, which makes more sense. But I'm like, these are one of the only
there was anarchy going on
that are supposed to be able to live with beta fish. Yeah, they didn't. So it was rough. They just disappeared completely. So that was rough.
Those fish, like just having the fish bowl in our room was kind of fun. I enjoyed it. So
it's kind of fun. Yeah, I like having
fish dogs,
around.
But
we can have fish.
Just something alive.
Yeah. Well, do you want to get into today's theme?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about, so there are two basic kinds of writers. You've got the planners or the plotters and the pantsers, right? And I tend to think being somewhere in the middle is probably a good place to be, because plotters, of course, have the benefit of not hitting writer's block as often and having like a schedule and being able to write maybe a little more career minded, but pantsers have the thrill of discovering the story as they write. So I feel like being in the middle, you can have both. So I'm in the middle. I lean pantser. So we're going to give you guys some tips or some tricks about how you can plan ahead just a little bit as a pantser without losing that like thrill of discovery writing. So little ways you can plan that will help you maybe avoid writer's block along the way, but won't take away the joy of the pantser life. If that makes sense. I feel like I said that in 3 very weird ways, but you guys,
No, I feel
it's
like
about
you made your point very well.
pantsing.
Yeah, about pantsing.
Yeah.
Not about pantsing our friends or enemies. We're talking about pantsing as in flying by the seat of your pants as you write whatever comes to mind. And I think this is how most of us get started. I can't say that I personally have ever met a writer who started out like as a plotter. Now, they might exist.
Because you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to have written a book to know how to plot a book, which is strange, which is usually why your first book is not very good, because you don't know what you're doing. And then you're like, okay, now I understand how to do this.
Yeah.
So
I guess they do teach you in school like how to do like outlines and stuff. But I never once like was like, oh, I'm gonna make an outline for this book I'm gonna write. I was just like, I have an idea and I just went with it. So I think most people at least do start out as pantsers, and then they kind of like move around on the spectrum of pantser to plotter. I am probably leaning. What's so funny is I used to be such a hardcore pantser, and I am definitely I'm probably in the middle, but plotter leaning. So
yeah. I will say I do think it's interesting. Oh, sorry. Say what you were going to say.
I'll go for it.
Just the author, like the really successful authors that I've heard of, many of them seem to be like plotters in a certain sense that did, I mean, obviously, like you said, basically we all start out as pantsers, but they seem to lean more the plotter route. And I'm not saying you can't be a pantser, but I do think there is something to, if you're going to have a career in it, you need to be able to plot it out at least a little bit, because then you can have like a schedule and have like consistent income and that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of a good tip for success in general. But
I agree.
And you'll get there.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this the last episode, which is why I wanted to talk about it like this as an actual subject today, because it's come up a few times recently. If you're writing like one book, like a standalone, then you could probably get by with majority pantsing for that book. If you're writing a series, you have to do some plotting if you want it to be something that is capable of selling. Because there's just too many things to keep track of. You might be like, no, I know my story. 3 books into your series, you're not going to remember the tiny details that you put in.
It's true.
So that's it. And then also the thing about being on a schedule, if you're trying to be successful in your career as a writer, whether you have an agent or you don't have an agent yet, or you want to self-publish, regardless, you need to commit to writing on some kind of schedule. And the best way to do that is to find a group that works for you and do everything you can to avoid writer's block. And we often talk about writer's block like it's this inescapable thing that there's nothing you can do about. You can actually. Plotting is like the probably number 1 deterrent to writer's block ever starting. You'll still get it a little bit, of course, but it can help so much. Just be like, okay, I know what has to happen next. I'm just going to force through it till I get there. And then, from there, when the inspiration hits again, I will just take off from there. And then go back and rewrite when you're inspired for the other parts. So that's the thing too, is if you have a schedule or something you have to keep and you have plotted out your book in advance, then writer's block is way less likely to throw you completely off schedule, which is nice. And it's way less of a factor. So if you get really thrown off by writer's block, or your writer's block tend to be like pretty extreme, people always say that writer's block, if you hit writer's block, the problem occurred somewhere really earlier on in your book. It's very true. If you're writing a series, it could have happened earlier in the series. So plotting is useful. You can even reverse plot. I've done that for books that I've been like, okay, just no one is interested in this book. I wonder why. I wonder if it's missing something integral. And so I did this with actually like 2 of my books. I looked at, just for example, J.K. Rowling's plotting method, which is super involved. Unless you're someone who really wants to be like a hardcore plotter, like you don't need to do something that intense. But I did, just for the sake of doing a reverse outline, which we've also talked about before. You can do it. It is harder to do a reverse outline, and you don't get the benefit of preventing writer's block. And you have to do usually quite a bit of rewriting. But at the very least, we do recommend doing a reverse outline, which is where you apply, some method of plotting. Then you should go backwards, thread the book, and make sure, like, okay, this character's goal was achieved here, this plot point happened here. But I feel like a good bare minimum, and I feel like you lean more towards the pantser than I do, I feel like. So you can tell me if you think that this is like a good bare minimum or not. I do think if you want to be a professional writer, that you do need to do some plotting, and even if you're like, no, I'm a hardcore pantser, I'm all against plotting, I think the bare minimum that you need to do is you need to know where your story starts, what the big climax event, what the big conflict is, where your story ends, and you need to know for each of your characters how they start out as characters and who they become by the end of the book. I feel like that is the absolute bare minimum. And if you're writing a series, you have to do that for the whole series and each individual book. So you need to say, like, at the beginning of book one, my characters are here because they're all these certain ways. The main conflict is this. And then by the end of the last book in the series, I want my characters to be here to have this ability or to have grown in this way or changed in this way. And then to have, you know, they're going to face this final conflict. So I feel like those are the absolute bare minimums. So it doesn't have to be super overwhelming. You can even just write it down in, like, on a notepad or in a Word document. Like, you don't have to do some big elaborate, you know, plotting thing. Although you might, if you want to, if you have never really plotted before, then maybe look up a couple different types of plotting and try them and see what works for you, because you never know.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I had that on my list, but I described it as have a rough idea of your beginning, middle, and end. So just something along those lines. I do think it can be rough. It doesn't have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be a really detailed outline or anything, but I would say that you need to know to some extent where you're going. And then, of course, you know, some rough details about how to get there. Which I think is probably the biggest culprit of writer's block, is just starting out a story with a premise with no idea of where you're trying to go. Because then, of course, you hit a point where you're like, okay, well, now what happens? Because you don't have direction. And so I do think if you want to avoid that, and I think a good rule of thumb is to kind of know your ending. I know a lot of pantsers say they like not knowing what the ending is, but in that case, then know where your character needs to be, like, emotionally, or what kind of trajectory you want them to be on. It doesn't have to be necessarily the specifics, but I would say you need to have some understanding of how you're going to end it, whether that's, you know, character wise or plot wise. Ideally both, but at least a little bit. And yeah, like you were saying with the series, just real fast, that there's, you know, sometimes the problem is beforehand with writer's block. Usually it's beforehand. The problem in a series, if you don't plot well, is that you can't go back and change a book that's already published. Or, like, you can, but then it's weird because then you have to do a second edition, and that's weird.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, so that's also a really good reason to plot the series out. And then in the series, I would say you need to do it for each book before the first book gets published, but then also, like, a beginning, middle, end to the series, whatever number of books that is, just because that way you have a sense of, like, okay, how long am I keeping up this momentum? How do I fill in the character development and all of that kind of stuff? So just a rough beginning, middle, and end, I think, is a good rule of thumb. Like you had, like, climax or whatever, that's also a good thing to know. So at least some formula, some version of that formula, I would say, is fair.
I agree. And there's a lot of different types. I mean, I guess we could technically do a whole other episode on methods of prepping, but I would rather just go over a couple brief ones now, which the one I've been using recently, and this is one that might be satisfying for those of you who are also hardcore pantsers, because it's kind of you just kind of go with whatever pops into your head. It's kind of that method, but you can use it as an outline. So I literally will just open a document or pick up my notebook, and I will start writing just, like, train of thought, where I want the story to go.
Yes.
And I'll write it kind of like a summary. So if you've written query letters or you've written synopses of books in the past, this is kind of like that, except that you're not trying to summarize something that you've already written. You're just going from scratch from your imagination. So it's so much easier. Mine usually end up being somewhere between, like, 8 and, like, 16 pages long total. Because
nice.
you can include whatever details you want. So if, like, a detail pops into your mind that you're like, well, I really want to include this, I really want this conversation to happen, or I really want the scene to happen, you can write out the whole scene or conversation or whatever it is. You can write out the whole thing, and then basically you use that as your outline. And as long as you've gone through it and put it in chronological order, and as you write, I usually will highlight the portions of the synopsis that I've already covered. So I know, like, okay, I already used that conversation. Okay, I already used that plot point. Okay, my character's already done that. And I highlight those things. And so then by the end of writing the book, I have this, like, 8 to 16 page collection of just all highlighted stuff. So that can be really helpful. And I think it's a really free form way to plot. Is it feels very free form, but you can do it more structured. You could look up J.K. Rowling's method of plotting, which is if you have a lot of subplots, that one's really useful.
Right.
If not, that you might not need something that big. You could also use like, it's kind of like the bracelet method where you're like, it's also kind of the one they teach you in school where like you like make a box on a piece of paper, you write something that happens, and then you make another box and write something else that happens. And you can either connect them all like in a chain of events in the right order, or you could like, diagonally connect them and like, as you decide where you want to put stuff, and you can move them all around.
Right.
You can even put like big plot points on sticky notes and up on the wall and rearrange them, as you're figuring out where you want the story to go. There are all kinds of ways to prep. I don't know that there's a wrong way to prep, except to not prep at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there should be at least some work you're putting in beforehand, to know that you have a, I don't know, serious enough or a big enough idea to actually finish the book or the series or whatever you're doing. Because if you just kind of start with a premise, you might find that there's just not enough there, and it turns into a short story maybe or whatever, but it's not a book. So, just kind of having a plan is a good idea to know if that's a good place to put your effort too.
Yeah. I feel like writing out like the kind of synopsis thing first is also really helpful for knowing like, so I really have enough meat to this story to write a whole book, and or is there so much that I need to have a series, or does it need to be a short story? Because like if you're writing like the full synopsis and you're writing it in detail, it's only like 5 pages. That might be a short story or a novella, Writing it, it's like 25, 30 pages, you're still going, then that might be a series. So it's just, and it depends, because it depends, I guess, how, descriptive, how many words you take to like tell your story. But it is creative and fun. And for me, it's a much easier way to gauge about how long or how much time I think it's going to take to tell whatever story. And you can also immediately see as you're writing it, you'll hit those moments of writer's block that you would hit when you're writing. Instead, you just hit these little mini writer's block points when you're writing the synopsis, and you go, oh, cool. So there's like, it like kind of feels like you're like, riding a bike and you go over a bump and you're like, okay, wait, back it up. Okay, so something has to happen here. Something different has to happen here. And then you fix it right there in your synopsis. And then you don't have, days, weeks, months of writer's block later on when you hit that obstacle. And you've already written, however many pages that if you go back, you get writer's block and figure out how to change it, you have to go back and change everything that you've written up to that point. It's because there's foreshadowing that's going to have to happen. There's sequence of events problems. There's things that, characters do and readers do and don't know yet. So it's just so much easier to kind of like spot those in advance, which I think is why the synopsis method works so well.
Yeah, it's easier to change the outline than to change the first half of the book you've already written. So
yes. Or God forbid,
a good place to put yourself in.
I mean, we've done it, but it's rough.
Yeah. I would say too, if you do lean more pantser like I do, a good strategy is also to maybe try to write your query letter first. This is something I've started to do so that I can have a good idea of what my main plot is versus the subplots, because you can mention subplots, but your query letter is going to be mostly main plot. It does leave open the problem that you don't need to have an ending yet. So like I would simultaneously do that, like you said, a synopsis kind of version. But if you write the query letter beforehand, you will also notice where maybe some of your ideas are a little flat. So if you write the query letter and you're like, okay, this is a good representation of what I want this book to be, but there's nothing really like unique about it. Nothing's like standing out. Or it doesn't feel like something that you feel an agent would pick up. It's too generic. Now you know, okay, I need to add something else to the premise or something else to the climax or the character that is going to make this book more appealing to a market, like especially a saturated market. So you can kind of pick out if you're going to need to add anything subplot wise or just, I don't know, world building wise, to make sure it's going to stand out that way. So write the query letter first. Also, I'd recommend that once you start, I'm not trying to get ahead of us or anything, but once you start, I would keep like a document open, whether it's the same one as your synopsis or a separate one. And as you get ideas for things that are going to happen later, write them in that document instead of thinking you're going to remember them, because you won't. Yeah. So make sure to write them down and try not to write them in code because you'll probably not remember the code, speaking from experience. So
it's true. Yeah. And same
yeah.
if you come across something that you're like, this is a plot hole that I fixed, but I want to make sure it's consistent, or I want to make sure that I foreshadowed this enough. If you're like, I changed this character's name, or I want to make sure I use the same spelling across the board, whatever like thought you have, like, oh, I need to remember to do that, write that down too. That's kind of also, it's like, that's like almost like plotting out your editing experience, but it will be so much easier if you do that. If you don't, and you just have to be like, what was that thing that I was going to remember? It is so much harder. You will forget things. It is, and the list grows. And as you're going back and editing, you'll see more, and you'll keep adding. And that checklist is going to just like grow and grow and grow. But there is an end to it, and you will be so grateful that you made it.
Yeah,
I usually put that right below my synopsis.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, it made me laugh a little bit when you were like, yeah, and then so you can see like in the query letter, like if your story is kind of flat or whatever it is. And my immediate thought was, yeah, nothing will show you how bad your book is like a query letter will.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that your book is bad if your query letter is bad, but it's much easier to write a really engaging query letter for a really engaging book. So either you really have to work on your query letter skills, which is probably part of it, but more likely than not, like you need to jazz up your book somehow if you just cannot seem to get your query letter to sound like really enticing.
Yeah. It also helps with the reverse problem where if you're trying to do too much in one book and you find that your query letter is getting way too long and like none of it can be deleted, well, now you either need to make something a subplot or take it out entirely because it's overcomplicating things.
So. Yeah, or save one of those subplots for another book. Whether it's like a spin-off book or you're like, maybe this is going to be a series, and then you put in the query with series potential. But it's true. Yeah, being able to condense your story into something that sounds really exciting but complete is key. If you're really struggling with that, then something's missing along the way, or there's too much of something along the way.
Yeah. Also, it just makes it easier after the fact so that you don't have to write the query letter then, which is really nice.
So hard to start from, especially when you, by the end of the book, you're like, I know this story so well. And then it's actually harder. And then also you usually have gotten like farther from the initial inspiration. And it's the inspiration that's so exciting. And it's when, agents can read like, this is an inspired person. I would assume that helps. So it is nice because then you kind of retain some of that energy. Because even though you'll write, like a bunch of different versions of the query letter, I can see how writing it before you write the book could be really helpful to like retaining that energy.
Right. And even if you're planning to self-publish, I still think it's a good idea because A, you're going to have to write a back of the book summary, but B, it's just going to help your process too. So I still think it's a good call.
I agree. I think it'll also just kind of like help solidify and keep you like mentally on track, kind of like if you write the query letter, then you're already thinking, it forces you to think, okay, this is my main character, this is the main plot, these are the themes that I want to deal with. So, and that's another thing that you guys should probably think about as themes in advance, but that could be so helpful. And I'm thinking about themes, so I got like myself like distracted thinking about themes. You don't have to plot themes in advance, or you don't have to prep themes in advance. It can be very helpful. The thing is, some themes I feel like you can inherently write into your story, and some themes are not going to appear until after you've written the book and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was thinking about that the whole time. That happens to me all the time. So there are both planned themes and the ones that just appear in your story. But I do think it's a good idea to have like one or two themes that you're trying to express in your story. And it is easier to define them first.
Right. I would even say I've been doing this lately where you don't necessarily have to know exactly what your theme is, but I would beforehand write out some topics that you kind of want to cover and get like way too many of them. Just get like 10 to 20. And your brain will already kind of be considering those and thinking about them. And you'll find that a lot of them fall off because you can't talk about that many themes in one book or even in a series necessarily. But you will figure out which ones kind of go together when you're kind of thinking about them all in a list form. I don't know. That's what I find to be true. So you don't have to know your stance, but like we said, theme is your stance on a topic, and then topic is just the subject matter. So if you write out a bunch of topics, you don't even have to necessarily know what your theme is, what your stance is on that. But if you write them out, I think just having them in your brain as a conscious here's kind of what I want to talk about here is to focus you, I think you'll, because part of the pantser thing is maybe you don't know what you think about something until you start writing about it. That's kind of what happens to me, where I'm like, what is my stance on this? And then I write the book and I'm like, okay, now I understand.
So exploration. Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way.
So you don't have to have the theme, but I would have topics for sure.
I agree. So. Topics for sure. I think that's a great idea. So when you're prep work, make sure that you've thought of some topics that you might want to cover. Shouldn't be too hard to like pretty quickly identify which topics are your story is lent more easily to dealing with. And then you can figure out what your theme is by writing the story and seeing like, oh, is that what I actually think? So that's somewhere where reverse plotting is really useful. So like, and I always do a little bit of reverse plotting. That's also what the taking notes of things that you want to change or go back and make sure they're consistent, that kind of stuff is also reverse plotting. But going back and being like, okay, now that I've written the book, what did I have to say about that topic or those topics that I talked about? And that's a great way, because also you will need that information for submitting your book to whatever, to marketing your book. You will also need that information. So looking back and saying, okay, like if your topic was grief or your topic was isolation, what then when you read your book over, you finished it, what does your story say to you about grief or isolation? Whatever your story says about that, that's your theme. So it is definitely easier to identify themes after you've written them, but I agree. I think picking some topics first that would go well with your book and or that you are already interested in can be so interesting. Of course, you always end up with like some themes that you hadn't planned for too.
Yeah, but for sure. Yeah.
Which are always, those are always kind of fun, but I do think
those are the delightful ones.
Those are the really delightful ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that it takes your writing just like kind of up a notch quality wise when you think in advance, oh yeah, I want to, write something thematically, pertinent in some way. So
yeah. And I think if you write out the topics too, they might combine in ways you don't expect. Whereas if you try to pick out a theme beforehand, you might almost be too simplistic about it because you're trying to fit it into one sentence. So like quick example, at the beginning of the year, I think I talked about it a little bit. I wrote a book that was like a masquerade style book, kind of like Caraval. And so when I was writing out the topics, I was like, okay, obviously one of the topics is going to be like things hidden beneath the surface or like the things that you hide and stuff. And then later down the list was the topic of death, because I always seem to talk about that one. And I wouldn't think that they would combine. I kind of had it in my head that it would be like subplot versus plot, but they ended up actually combining along the way. And there were certain topics that I thought, definitely I'm going to cover that. It's a masquerade. I have to talk about that. And then I didn't, and I replaced it with those. So you might think that they can't go together, and you don't have to try to force anything along the way. But if you just have, you're just kind of aligning your thoughts with all of the possibilities, and then the ones that don't fit will fall away, and the ones that stay might combine in ways you don't expect. So
yes, I completely agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, let's see what else. Most of mine are like more, do you have any like practical ones? Because I have some obscure ones.
I don't think so. I think I've already shared my practical ones. I feel like they're pretty simple. And like the whole point of my practical ones is keeping it simple. Because I do think here's my warning to you plotters out there that are so proud of being plotters. You might be overcomplicating things. I've done it. Yeah. It's very easy when you're like, I'm going to embrace the process of plotting to super overcomplicate it. Yeah. And then you lose that initial like excitement and inspiration. And when you don't have that and you're just purely, writing what you've plotted, people can tell it's not the same. It's not the same experience at all. Yeah. It's not the same experience for you either. So don't ruin it for yourself by over prepping, or ruin your story by prepping too much for it and making your boxes too defined.
Yeah, it is really kind of just about giving yourself an outline in the strictest sense of the word, where you don't know all the details, but you have a general sense of where you're going with this. Yeah, on both like the thematic level and the plot level and the character level and all that. So you can do it in varying degrees of specifics. Plotters, of course, tend to be more specific in their outlines, but you can take the format of the outline and just be really, really bare bones with it, and it will still work for you if you're a pantser. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. All right. So I have some like obscure / creative ways to plot, I guess. So one of them is this one's kind of weird, but make sure beforehand that you have internet. because if you want to look something up and that you don't know, it's very frustrating to have to go back. Yes. Especially if it's a very small thing. So like for my books, one of the things I needed to know is how many like pints of blood is in the human body. And like that varies depending on the person, right? I was like, how much blood can this person lose before it's unrealistic that they would survive, right?
Yeah.
So if I had to look that up and there's no internet, like that's not the kind of thing I can just ask some random person in the house, or like something I can, you know, pretend to know for, I mean, I could pretend to know it, I guess, but it would be a strange thing to have to go back and fix because it's such a small detail that I might forget or I might lose the sense of relevance around it. So obviously there are going to be times your internet is out and you just can't do anything about that. And I wouldn't say to not write then, but just, you know, kind of checking, making sure you don't like knowing whether or not you have it, so that if something like that pops up, I think that might be like helpful, I guess. Yeah. Then I have keep beforehand, as you're kind of thinking through the story and you're doing like what we've been talking about, maybe outlining a little bit, I would form lists of some extra details that you might need along the way. I think I've said this before, but you don't have to have your whole cast of characters figured out, but I would have names picked out. So if you have some kind of, if you're in a fantasy world or a sci-fi world, or even if you're in the real world and you just want to be able to pick a name real quick, I would have a list of, you know, male names, girl names, unisex names, last names, all that kind of stuff, nicknames even. And you're not going to use all of them, but just names that you feel fit in with the vibe or the world that you're going for. I would also do things like location. So if it's taking place in the real world, like let's say you're setting it in New York City and you want it to be realistic, I would have lists of specific restaurants or streets that you can pull from as you're writing, so you don't have to look up a map every time. Or like scents or sites that you want to describe. Sometimes it could be helpful to take something that's in like right in front of you, like a scent, and try to think about how to describe it right then, so that later on when it's not there, you can describe it. What else did I say? And having symbols or images to pick from too. So again, come up with a list of like 5 to 10. You're not going to use all of them. You don't want to clutter it with too many symbols, but just have a couple that kind of represent the theme you think you're going for, so that you can pick from it and maybe just plant them around the story in various places. Or when you decide, okay, maybe I need a symbol for this, like if it's you know, if there's a war going on and each side needs a symbol so that they can have like flags or whatever, then you just have a list you can pick from instead of having to sit there and think about it for too long to the point where your inspiration goes away. So just having a list of various things that you think you might need. You can't predict everything. Sometimes I have lists of names and then I run out of names, which is weird because I get a lot of names. But you know, just having that planned out beforehand will make it a quicker decision in the moment, instead of trying to, you know, either come back to it later and forget about it for the moment, or, you know, sit in the moment and lose the writing inspiration you have to figure it out. So that too. What else? So this is something I've also been doing lately, is create aesthetics beforehand.
Yes, you have been doing this lately.
I have. And it's, I don't know, this one's a hit or miss. I wouldn't say that this is like, some of these I think are just really good, solid ideas. This one depends on you and probably the story, because I've noticed it's really helpful for standalones, not so helpful for series, because I do find that once I get like pictures of the characters to use, that's how I'm now visualizing them. And I mean, it's kind of fun to just visualize your own character. So if that's something that you're really attached to, don't do this. But you could even just do symbols or locations or things like that. But just I think the process of thinking through, okay, what are the symbols that would represent this story well? What is the location? And being forced to find images and look through other images that don't fit, and then finding the ones that do. I think that can just kind of clarify what you're trying to do with the scenery, with the setting, and also with maybe some of your themes or your characters and stuff. Because a lot of times I'll make like a character aesthetic, and then I'm like, okay, what represents this character? And just to find enough pictures, I'll think of like a weird clothing item that they wear a lot, or a certain symbol that they like maybe they really like butterflies, and so they have a butterfly necklace, so I can have a picture of a butterfly necklace or something. And it forces you to think through those small details that your story is not going to be like flat without it, but it might add richness to it to have it. So just have a greater sense of those smaller details. Again, you don't need a ton of specifics if you want to pants it a lot, but it can be helpful to know ahead of time, here's a specific thing I can make unique about them. Especially if, so the one I'm like sort of writing now, I'm kind of had writer's block, but there are 4 main-ish characters, 1 point of view character, and they started out all really similar. And so I noticed when I was making the aesthetics that was going to be a problem, that their names were too similar or that their style was too similar. And so being forced to make like separate little like aesthetic pictures for them was helpful in determining how to make them stand out from each other. So if you're coming to a story with a close group of friends in some way, that can be particularly helpful.
Yeah.
So there's that too. Okay, another weird one. This is going to be per story. It doesn't fit for every story, but if it is not super important what time of year your story takes place, I would have it take place in the time of year that you're writing it. Because so if like it's wintertime and your story is like, well, it doesn't really matter what time of year it takes place, set it in winter because you're going to be cold. You're going to be seeing things around you that are wintry. And you're going to, I think, just kind of inherently plant that atmosphere into the book. It's not going to take a ton of effort. It's going to come really naturally. And it's just one of those things that you're not going to have to put a ton of brain power behind. And so it will come very organically from the story. And I know you're probably thinking, well, what if it takes me longer than 1 season to write a book? That's fine. You can, pick a season that you know it's going to be harder later on. So you say, okay, well, it's winter now, but I need springtime in the story because that's when the rough stuff is going to come and I need that environmental help. Or whatever, but just something to think about, that set it in the time that you're actually currently in, because it's always like in the summer it's like, oh, I miss winter, and then in the winter you're like, man, I really wish it was hot outside. So don't try to write to the season you have currently forgotten what the experience is like. So
I agree. Right, which
as much as
what
possible,
you're experiencing, what you're feeling, it'll feel more authentic. It's also more fun. I feel like it gets you like in the spirit of whatever season you're in real life. It's nice. You can appreciate in the moment all the best things about the season and all the worst things. And it's just so much more real than trying to like remember. It is crazy how like my memory is just so every year I'm like fall hits and I'm like, fall's my favorite. I hate summer. And then winter is wonderful. But then I'm like, wait, but you know what? Summer is really great. And then summer starts and I'm like, screw summer. Where's winter? Like every single year I go through this and I tell myself I'm not going to go through this. And I do every single year.
So as much as possible, obviously, like I do think a lot of people that write holiday books, obviously you have to like start writing those. I mean, you don't have to, but a lot of people will write them in the middle of the summer because unlike Christmas albums, even they record those in the middle of the summer. And that just seems so hard for me.
It's difficult.
You can do it, but I mean, I would recommend maybe writing it in the winter.
Authentic, though. It feels like the Hallmark movies, which I do like, but you can tell that all of the fall decorations that are up are, oh my God, I got hot sauce in my eye from my hands. That's what I get. That's what I get for eating my small life. But anyways, you can see like all like the plastic like holiday decorations, and you can see people sweating in the background and the sun blazing down, and you're like, I don't believe that it's winter. I just don't.
There's something feels off about this.
Like all the pieces are here, but I'm just not believing it.
Right. So as much as possible. And if it takes place throughout the year, I mean, it really depends on your schedule, but if you have a story that takes place over the span of a year, maybe try to write it over the span of a year and slow yourself down so you can get a good sense of that. But really for the purposes of this episode, it's really more of here's a way to give yourself one less thing to think about. Because if you're in the middle of that season, you don't have to think about too hard how to write it.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
Yeah. And I think this is my last one. I would get a playlist together of songs to listen to. Now, if you write to silence, this won't help as much, but I still think that if you are listening to kind of a consistent playlist of songs, it's gonna like, I don't know, it's gonna, so you know how there are songs and they remind you of the time that you listen to them a lot. So like a song will come on and you're like, that came out when I was in middle school. That's kind of the effect you're going for with this. And I would be picky about the songs. I would put them on theme, or I would have, some kind of tone or instrument in the background that really does describe what you're going for atmospherically, so that your brain is just aligned with that, right? So
the tone. So as soon as you listen to that music, it sets the tone. Even if you're like, I'm going to turn it off before I start writing.
Exactly.
And you can do that to like keep yourself like in the zone. Like when you're, working in the garden like me, or when you are, cooking or cleaning, or you're in the car, or you're at work, if you're able to listen to music at work, and it just keeps you like in the zone for that. So if you're like, okay, when I get home from work today, I want to sit down and write. So maybe as much time as you're able to listen to music throughout your workday, you're listening to that specific playlist, and you are ready in the zone, ready to keep that same tone going, to keep that atmosphere going.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like a strain. It's almost like prepping you instead of prepping the book, but it puts you in a mindset to really commit and really be in the zone for that. So I would also say instrumental music is very underrated. So if you find the lyrics annoying and you can't write when you're listening to lyrics, you can always go instrumental. There are soundtracks.
Sometimes that's me.
There's classical music. There are bands that just do instrumental music. Cinematic music is really cool. It's one of my personal favorites now that I've discovered it. So there are options too. But I mean, it's totally fine if you don't like to listen to music, because every once in a while I do like silence if I'm getting easily distracted. But like you said, listen to it in the car, listen to it, when your friends are over or whatever, just have it in the background. So you're kind of constantly maintaining that train of thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think that was all my tips.
Cool. I was thinking you made me think of one of your earlier ones. I have one more to add to your list, which is if there is any type of traveling, and I mean from one neighborhood to the next, or from like one country to another, you better have a map in advance. And I don't mean like in your head or like a loosely drawn one, because I've tried both. Like a nice, like pour some time into that, making a map. If it's in a real place, like if it's in New York, for example, print off a map of New York. New York is a little tricky too, because culturally, like all the different like suburbs have very different feelings about each other. So that one's tricky. So you'd have to do research there too. But regardless, like you need to know like what's the north part of the city, like the south part, east, west, and you need to know like where your character is going. So if something takes place in like a specific city, you need a city map. State map. Country, you need a map of the country. You need to know what areas these things are going. And also, because you'll have like vague questions when you're writing, you'll just breeze past them. And that's something that's going to become a plot hole later. So just much easier to know what you're writing. And if you're like, I invented it so I can do whatever I want, it's in a made up world, do yourself a favor. Either if you're a good artist, you can draw like a detailed one. But it needs to be like, you need to make a finalized version, not like just like a draft, like make a finalized version of what your map of your world looks like. And build out the terrain, like really like know like what's going on in your world or this made up country, like know what's going on at least vaguely in the different regions, because you can hint at it. That's great for world building, but also because in the future you are going to be like, wait, where was that country located, or where is this person coming from, or how far is it? And you also need to know based on like the scale of the map that you've drawn, or you can use, and this is what I've used, there are free generators you can use online for maps, and it'll generate a map that you can use and build out yourself, or you can use it to kind of draw with like professional like online tools your map, which is what I did recently, and it has been such a lifesaver. I thought like this is just like a silly way to like spend like 5 hours of my time. But it has been so helpful. It's been so helpful in plotting this book, this series, spin-off books in the same universe. It will just benefit you in ways that you can't even imagine right now. But it's really worth it, because you never want to forget where a character's coming from or how long it will take your characters to get from one place to another. So that's the part about knowing what degree you have scaled your map to. Like if they're going to spend a ton of time like in one big city in this world, then you should have a map for that big city too. And you need to know, like based on the scale of the map, of your big world map, your country map, your city map, whatever, how long it will take your characters to get from point A to point B. Because that's important. The consistency is very important. That's going to affect your pacing. That's going to affect whether or not you include travel time from location to location, or you just kind of pick up the story when your characters have gotten to the next point. And that's something that I will give a little bit of criticism to classic fantasy, is that we spend a lot of time on the travels. And I get that that's because they were being realistic about the time it takes to get places. So this is really a pro and a con of classic fantasy. But you should know those things. Like, that's what they're doing, right? Is they know exactly how long it will take. So it's good to have that. And if you don't have it, your readers will kind of sense it, you know, that you don't really know. So that's just
you're trying to be vague.
Yeah, that you're trying to be vague. Exactly. I wish that some of our classic fantasy authors had been intentionally vague on that point. It's very clear that they have all the detail to know how long it takes to get from point A to point B.
They're showing it off.
Yeah, they're
like,
showing it off.
Okay, it's
exactly. They're like, this is how well built my world is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we know, okay, like, just get to the next plot point. But it is important to know. And then also, if you're like, this book's a little shorter than I wanted, I'd like to add some more scenes in, you can go, you know what, the travel time from this location to this location is actually, you know, a good amount of time. Maybe I can put this scene in here because, you know, to fill some of that travel space. So it gives you a lot of opportunity to kind of tweak things and like see where you have room for more or less as the writer telling the story. But also it gives such a level of authenticity. And then also, in the future, if you ever have to reference back and wonder, where's this person from? Where is that country located? What direction is it? How long would it take them to get to some place? You will have those questions. And if you have built your map in advance, you will have those answers. If you have not, or you just drew like a really loose outline, you're just like, I have an idea in my head. None of that is going to help you. It's not going to help.
Well, yeah, because it'll morph over time and you won't even notice it because it's your own head. And it's kind of like when something happens to you when you're 10, you insist, like, I was wearing a blue shirt, but then you see a picture and you're wearing a green shirt and you're like, how did I miss that? Exactly. So it will morph in your head. If your head is the only place it is located, you will not have a standard.
Yeah.
And it will change.
And even if you've done like a loose draft, like this is why I'm saying it, because this is me personally, my problem with maps. I have done no maps at all. Always a problem. I have done I have a map in my head, always morphs, and it's impossible to remember where I started. And then I have also done the loose kind of like hand-drawn like loose maps where I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to put this over here and this over there. Not helpful, because in my head I'm like, this is just like a loose draft. I know that, and so I don't follow it. So I just kind of like add stuff, and I don't like make note of stuff. This is some good prep work to do. It's harder to do after the fact. You could do it after the fact if it's like a first book, maybe. If it is a book in a series, do not wait any longer than finishing writing the first book to create an established map you can follow from then on out, because it will be so hard if you have not. And that includes, like I said, it doesn't have to be like a big like fantasy world map or country map. If it's a city, especially if it's an established city, anyone who has ever been to that city or lived in that city is going to know if you're giving incorrect directions, or if some character is like walking a distance that would not be feasibly walked in the amount of time it takes them to in a book. So or drive that distance. So you do really need to know those things. And they're easy to know in advance. That's the thing. And as far as like map making goes, if you're doing like a fantasy or sci-fi, it's really fun. Like it just gets you like really in the mood for writing. Yeah. It's like really inspirational. It kind of, you can listen to your playlist while you're doing it. Like it's
solidify that association.
Fun. Exactly. Yeah. So that's my last thing that your like really practical prep points made me think of.
Yeah. I think basically if you are a pantser, most of your plotting should really revolve around your setting in some facet. You want to have the landscape so that you can focus on pantsing the plot. Is really what I would suspect you guys want, because that's kind of what I do. And even maybe the characters a little bit, right? Have a little bit of a trajectory for those two categories, but you want to be able to focus on the plot and the characters. And that means you need to have like a really well thought out setting. And that means the atmosphere, that means the location, that means the timeline, or like the year that it's happening and all that kind of stuff. Just to have a sense or a more concrete sense of what all of that is, so that you don't have to focus on those tiny details. So like even like to the map thing, I would have street names picked out. Just like use the street names, because it can be confusing to, you know, at the end of the book have to say like, we went back to the place where that thing happened, instead of just saying we went back to such and such street. So it's also going to help in the very minute specifics of your writing, and it's going to cut down on words, and it's just going to be more streamlined, I think. And then you can always like go back in the editing process and add, you know, things later, but you know, clarifying it as much as possible beforehand is going to make the editing process easier on you. So as much of the setting as possible, I would have really solidified. And then you can focus on all of the other things that I think are more fun to pants.
Yeah,
so,
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Anything else that you have on prepping for or plotting for pantsers?
Yeah, that's all I got, I think.
Sweet, same. Well, what about writing updates?
Nothing really. I've been, what was I doing last week? Oh yeah, I'm resting my Lord of the Flies remix book. I worked on the query letter a little bit. I think I'm gonna try and do that soon though. Yeah, that's basically it. I had I don't know, I didn't have a big week, but I had a week where I didn't do a lot of writing because I was doing other things, so not too much. Weirdly enough though, here's just like a little thing I'll say that is kind of writing related. When I had to register for my baptism, it was like this very normal registry where it's like, what's your name, what's your t-shirt size, and it was like, give us a 3-sentence or less summary of your testimony. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, take the biggest moment of your life and sum it up in 3 sentences or less. But
which
I will say,
I have practice.
I did it. And I was like, wow, all of that practice writing pitches really weirdly pays off in strange parts of your life.
It really does. It pays off in my like work writing, like my corporate writing all the time. It is crazy how useful those skills become.
Yes. So, I mean, I know the pitches suck. They are the bane. I mean, the query letter, no, the synopsis sucks. The query letter is awful. And then the pitch is just like death. But if you can figure out how to do it, it really is a translatable skill into other areas of your life.
It is such a translatable skill.
Yeah, strange tip. So do not fear. It will come up.
It will all pay
later.
Off.
Yeah. It will. It'll come back for you at some point. So you might as well develop the skill.
Yeah, seriously. If you don't do it, it's still gonna get you. So
yeah, exactly.
No escape.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's all I have. Not too much writing update wise.
Nice. I don't have any personal writing updates, but I have been reading your book, your Lord of the Flies remix. So I'm like a quarter of the way through it and I'm very much enjoying it. So that's what I've been doing, which I feel like counts because I'm like contributing to your writing process.
True.
Not my own writing process. Yeah. I still haven't done much writing on my own. Like I said, I finally finished the last book in the Renegade series, which is what I said I really wanted to do before I got like super into my own writing. So I am getting to the point where I can focus on my writing now, except that I cannot, and I have said this before, I cannot seem to not work myself to death. Like I at the moment am still laid off. I've been applying for between 10 and 20 jobs every single day, except for Sundays. And I still no leads there, but that part only takes me like an hour or two a day, maybe 3 hours tops a day if I have like a bunch of applications and they're really involved. Other than that, I've just been like working outside on the farm for 4 hours in the morning. An hour before that, I feed all the those are farm chores, by the way. Like, I mean, like working on like, putting up fences and weeding the garden, that kind of thing. Like a whole hour before that, I'm feeding all the animals, packing up lunches for my mom and my husband, doing the dishes. And so then after the outside stuff, I come in and I shower, and then I get to whatever contract work I picked up to try and make a few bucks. And that takes forever. And then I make dinner for everyone, and then I keep doing that contract work until like 9:45 at night. So
oh my gosh.
Even though this should be the time in my life where I'm like, oh, this free time, I'll get so much writing done. It's almost like because I'm not employed and making decent money, or like hardly any money at all, except for these like really low paying contract jobs, I feel like I don't have I feel like I can't. I feel like I can't use that time for myself to write because I'm like, it's not doing something that's immediately productive. I can't immediately see the payoff. Like my family can't immediately see the payoff. So I feel guilty about it. So it's driving me crazy because I'm like so conflicted because I'm like, now is the time to write. But I'm also
you're also pregnant. So like now's the time to relax. And you're like, nope. Not for me.
How about I don't? How about I never relax?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, the end is in sight. And I do have very specific goals for what I want to accomplish on the farm this year. And I think what my brain is doing is going, you are going to be so pregnant in the hottest months of the year, like when we hit July and August. So that means you only have basically 1 month left to get done anything you want to get done on the farm before going outside is going to kill you within 10 minutes. So I think part of my brain is like, you can't write right now because you can do that later when you physically cannot go outside and do things. So right now you need to go outside and weed the garden because your pregnant ass is not going to be able to do that when it hits 100 degrees on a daily basis, which is true. So I think that's part of the problem too, is I'm like, I feel like I'm going to be out of commission for like 2-3 solid months, like as far as like chores go. Like I can like, do the dishes and take naps and like do a job. Hopefully I'll have a job.
Right.
So it's hard because I'm like, it's valid, but it's always valid. There's always a valid reason. So I'm just once again conflicted. It's also hard because I don't have like any like insanely pressing story ideas. So I'm like, there's some stuff I could pick up that I'm still like, yeah, it's a good idea, but like the inspiration isn't active. I'm gonna have to like dig it back up. So that plus the fact that I'm like, I have 1 month left to accomplish whatever I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Basically until winter.
Give yourself a timeline.
Yeah. So I don't know. But I did say that by the end of the year, I want to have at least one of my books that I'm working on finished. And I stand by that. I do think I can accomplish that. I think even if I spend all of June more on chores than on writing, I still think I can accomplish it. So hopefully I start before the end of June, but if not, I will be forced to stop doing so much soon. So anyways, that's where I'm at, which feels like it's just like a whole bunch of excuses. I hear it, don't worry, I know. There's always valid reasons. I'm always the first person to say you have to make time to write. There are always valid reasons not to. It's hard. I'm just saying that I'm probably more likely to make time in July on August.
Fair enough.
And September. Yeah. So fingers crossed I do. But like I said, I still stand by my goal of finishing a book by the end of the year. So, and I usually write a book like within 2 to 4 weeks when I like write a whole book. So I'm like, I still have plenty of time to accomplish this.
For sure.
Yeah. So I just have to like keep things in perspective and also stop like guilting myself for doing too much or not enough or whatever.
You should because you'll have had the baby by NaNoWriMo. So you should do NaNoWriMo early and do like August or September or something.
That's a good idea.
Do it yourself.
That's a very good idea. NaNoWriMo early. Baby month. Maybe I'll do it in August because it is the month of the year here where walking outside is like taking a steaming hot shower. And it is
you want to stay in.
And I will be 8 months pregnant.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Because you're due in October,
around
right?
there. Yeah, I'm due at the beginning, or I'm due like halfway through October. I will be suffering just basically in August. So I might
distraction.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that's what I'll do. But so there's my writing / not writing update. Don't worry, guys, I feel plenty guilty. But I also don't think that feeling guilty is the way to motivate myself. So I'm working on it. I'm a mess. I feel like I'm just always a massive mess when it comes to Ash's writing corner. But
I want to tell you, I know, thank you. I want to tell you not to feel guilty, but I have no room to talk. I feel the same way whenever I'm not writing. So, I mean, I'll say the words. You don't need to feel guilty, but I also totally get it. So.
You're like, but I would feel the same way. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you feel like your calling is to tell stories, is to be a storyteller. And you are struggling so hard to find a time to tell. I'm like, because that's why I feel guilty, is because I still very much identify as a storyteller, and I do think that all of my natural strengths lean that way. So I feel like I'm wasting potential. But there's stuff that has to get done, which is a fact, which is annoying. But
there's life and stuff.
Life and stuff.
I feel the same way too. I've been on a roll with writing books, and I'm like, gosh, where could I be if I had started this earlier? Which is stupid because of course I wouldn't have been the same writer. So I needed to go through dry spells. So it's silly, but I'm still gosh, I could have dozens of books written by now if I'd been doing this my whole life.
But I know.
So
it's ridiculous.
whatever. No regrets.
Gotta love all
on
that misplaced guilt. But we want to
Yeah.
feel motivated, not guilty. And anything that you do for writing or for, prepping always counts. So maybe I just need to do more prep work. And then I will feel and like maybe just toy with some more ideas and figure out what I really want to write. I mean, I picked like one of these 2 books I've already written some of, but maybe I want to do something completely different. I don't know. And maybe if I do some plotting work, maybe I'll be able to figure it out. And also then I've got some like prep work done when I'm like ready to get down to business.
Yeah. Seems like a good plan.
I think so. Yeah. Was there anything else that you want to share with our writer friends?
Nope, that's all.
Sweet. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you too have felt the writer's guilt, or if not, and you're a psychopath, happy for you, first of all. Second of all, would be even happier for you if you want to leave us a 5-star review. That would be wonderful. And don't forget to tell your friends who are writers or who know writers and just want to understand why we are the way we are. You guys can tell them to come check out the Scripturient Society, because that is the way the podcasts grow. It's all word of mouth pretty much. If you guys want to support the pod, you can do that. You can go to storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. There's lots of cool merch there. You can also go to our Patreon and support us there if you would like to. If you guys just want to chat, we would love to hear from you guys. You guys can message us on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok, the Scripturient Society. Also, great way to stay motivated. We will never guilt you on there, but we will, put like helpful writing tips and, encouragement, all that good stuff. And on TikTok, lots of stuff to laugh at. So definitely follow us if you haven't and you are a writer. It's all stuff for you specifically. And then if you guys want to send us a longer form message, you can certainly do that. You can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. We want to hear what you're working on. We want to hear what you thought about what we said. We want you to suggest topics for us to talk about, whatever it is. We want to hear about your dog, your cat. We would just love to chat with you guys. You guys can also join our writers group and talk about all that stuff. The link to the Discord is below for that. I think that's everything we've got. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.